When Tom arrived, he looked into the mirror and told himself, "I'm not going to rob any more banks."
Breaking news.
The stylist spun the chair around. Tom's black hair was bleached platinum blonde, spiked with the sides shaved. He was ready for his new life in a shared house in Encinitas, one of the constellation of beach towns near San Diego. Since college, Tom's cycling buddy had become a Navy jet pilot. Now he lived in a two-story house with a bunch of military guys and a three-legged greyhound named Foxtrot. Tom slept on the top floor in a tiny 20-square-foot space his housemates called the turret. He hung his track bike, a red, white and blue GT, on the wall above his mattress. The turret was cramped, but its windows looked out over the Pacific. At night, Tom fell asleep listening to the waves. "How is it going?" asked Laura, calling from Chicago. "Well," replied Tom. His skin was tanned from the time on the outdoor velodrome. He'd bought his GT from Bill Clay, who'd given him a copy of the training manual used by the 1996 US Olympic cycling team. Every morning at the YMCA, Tom walked through the Olympic strength training regimen to build muscle mass. Within a month, he was squatting 500 pounds. At the velodrome, his already explosive dead start was getting deadlier. As the weeks passed in early 2000, Tom rounded into the best shape of his life. But the monotony of training was setting in, and Tom's promise to himself was soon forgotten. His secret identity and the instant rush that only a robbery could provide called to him. The day after Valentine's Day, Tom hit a bank in Encinitas. On February 29th, one in Solana Beach. The next day, another one in Encinitas. 2 weeks after that, one in San Diego. On 24th March, Tom robbed two banks, the Southwest Community Bank in Encinitas and the US Bank in Carlsbad. Do you want the second drawer too?" The 20-year-old blonde US bank teller had nervously started. She stuffed the bag with so much cash that it spilled out over the top. As Tom exited, A trail of bills flittered to the ground. It was his biggest score yet. $10,274. He pocketed all the $5 and the $1 and left the 20s inside public restrooms and porta potties at beaches. He didn't need the money. Then one morning, Tom awoke in Tourette and found he couldn't move. An intense pain surged through his lower back. He'd thrown it out overtraining. It would take hours before he could get to his feet, and weeks before he could pedal without waking up in agony the day after. Muscle spasms kept causing his body to contort. His right shoulder was 2 inches higher than his left. His plan to race in the Olympic trials was over. Soon after Tom returned to Chicago, his girlfriend Laura dumped him for good. He had changed. He wasn't merely devastated about missing the trials, he was colder, more distant, and secretive. "I don't know what's going on with you, but I know it's not right," she had said. Tom moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Ukrainian village with George, a 230-pound Greek Hulk who blocked most of the doorway and no Olympics, and suddenly all he had left was his unrelenting desire to feel exceptional, to prove to himself that he was too clever to get caught. He worked at night. Tom assumed that George was an exotic. Once his lower back recovered, Tom robbed the LaSalle Bank in Highland Park. George replied that he was a police officer. The heist in which he dumped his $4,009 haul in a park trash can. Tom couldn't resist. The next week, he hit 3 banks in 3 days, and it didn't always go smoothly. Outside a Bank 1 in Evanston, a dye pack exploded in his bag, ruining all the cash. No Olympics. All he had left was his unrelenting desire to feel exceptional, to prove to himself that he was too clever to get caught. Once his lower back recovered, Tom robbed the LaSalle Bank in Highland Park. The heist in which he dumped his $4,009 haul in a park trash can. The next week, he hit 3 banks in 3 days, and it didn't always go smoothly. Outside a Bank 1 in Evanston, a dye pack exploded in his bag, ruining all the cash. Later that day, he hit an Eden's Bank in Wilmette, where a heavy-set 50-something teller took one look at Tom's note and harshly scolded him in a Slavic language. She pointed sternly at Tom, who quickly fled without any money. The third robbery, at a Harris Bank in Wilmette, was a success. But when Tom rode up to his apartment, he saw 2 cop cars parked at the front lawn. His heart sank until he realized it was just his roommate George. Tom went upstairs to his room, where he hid the $4,244 he'd stolen. George had no clue his roommate had just knocked over his 13th bank. 2 months later, Tom robbed the Bank of Northern Illinois in Libertyville. Chief Curry, who'd spent that winter helping blow snow from his neighbor Jay Justice's driveway, didn't have any leads, and neither did the FBI. The most interesting aspect of the robber's MO, his getaway vehicle, was still unknown. No one suspected Tom, and so he grew cocky. Once, at a nightclub, he met a 20-something brunette in a midnight blue cocktail dress. Tom couldn't believe it when he learned she was a US Marshal. On the dance floor, as loud club music pulsed, she smiled playfully. She asked him, "What do you do?" He replied, "I rob banks," and continued dancing. She nodded and kept dancing too.